seeing this meteor that has fallen over there in northern Enrania? Well, let's start with the information. We're live, thank you for joining us. Let's get started with the details. And right away, we have to start with this attack that has been drawing attention all day and all night. In fact, we reported this situation in Garage very early on. In Iran, things are still burning, hours after the massive attacks and nighttime bombings that lit up the sky, and we're going to give you the details. Was there any drama at the moment of selection? The successor to Ali Khamenei and Mojtaba Khamenei has already been chosen, and it turns out that in his own father's establishment in Ali Khamenei, he asked not to be chosen himself. Even so, he has been selected. It's now official. He is the supreme leader in Iran. Meanwhile, in Kansas City, they are reporting this situation at Kansas City International Airport. People were evacuated due to an alleged bomb threat. Police and bomb-sniffing dogs are currently searching the lobby and terminals. They have probably finished by now, but anyway, it's obviously a very serious situation. Well, these images are also being reported from the United Arab Emirates. The United Arab Emirates has reportedly been intercepting and destroying Iranian drones that were attempting to attack in their country. Pay attention to that moment, there it is. At that moment, the Shahed drones were destroyed. Meanwhile, this image is impressive. What people on the ground are referring to are sculptural monuments of horse heads made of stainless steel. This is in Scotland, they say. At Kansas Airport, people were evacuated due to a bomb threat. Police and bomb detectors were involved. At Kansas Airport, there were supposed dogs, bomb detectors. At the Kansas Airport, Kansas, there were dogs, it was stated. It is in honor of the workhorses that once powered that, said Pais. Meanwhile, images of this huge B-1 bomber from the United States Air Force's Answer images are also being observed. And at that moment in Answer, preparing for strike missions in Operation Epic Fury. Over there in the Middle East against Iran, at that time in the Middle East against them. We will be seeing, not only today, but in the coming weeks, constant attacks against the Ayatollah's regime. And this is the moment when it's about to take off. Let's listen.
Yes.
These images can also be seen. This would be in Tel Aviv, according to reports and Israeli media. They have been showing this damage, this huge crater that was created and that threw a vehicle into the air. We'll see the details in a moment. Perhaps the most surprising thing today are these tanks. Several of them, more than 30 fuel tanks, have reportedly been affected. This is inside Iran. Right now, the Iranian authorities are issuing warnings because they are going to reduce gasoline for the citizens. And that's because they lost a good part of the fuel they had in the tanks. Although these, they say, are mostly for military use, obviously the civilian supplies will now partly go to the military, and there is already an escalation in prices as well. Iran is also reporting, in Saudi Arabia as well, the launch of a ballistic missile toward that country. They claim that 2 people may have lost their lives and there are several injured, also at this moment. They are the team. Look at how she's doing this. She's making some signs. Well, supposedly one of the Iranian team members is asking for help because a television host from the Iranian regime called them traitors. And, well, they're afraid that when they return to their country, they will be severely punished. Obviously, let's hope that soon we find out how each of the soccer team members is doing. Ray, Iran, that's Ray, a protest form. In one of the matches they had recently, they didn't want to sing the anthem, they just stayed silent, that's all, but in the next one they had to sing the anthem. Because it seems like they must have gotten a scolding along with the coach, also Ray, Bejo. That way, well, they've been called all sorts of things, especially by the pro-regime presenters over there in that country. Well, what has happened in the conflict? What has happened so far? Look, to begin with, Iran reportedly launched a missile with a possible cluster payload against Israel. According to reports, Iran launched a new wave of ballistic missiles against Israel today, Sunday, raising the tension in this conflict. One of the possible impacts is the center of Israel. According to initial assessments, a cluster-type warhead may have been used. It's a type of weapon that has its own ammunition and disperses, according to reports, to widen the area of attacks. The authorities confirmed that at least 6 people were injured by impact fragments and debris caused by the explosions. Among the injured, a man of approximately 40 years old is in serious condition after what happened. According to reports, this happened in the city of Petah Tikva. 5 other people were injured, including a 25-year-old man in moderate condition. Well, between Tel Aviv, the first attack, and Petah Tikva, also another one of the attacks. The attack is part of a particularly intense day in this region where efforts have been made to act quickly so that the population remains safe. Now, the Israel Defense Forces deployed rescue teams and emergency units to inspect the affected areas and assess the damage. The conflict is not limited to Israel but is also affecting Gulf countries. Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Kuwait, and Bahrain are also reportedly being attacked. But look, we'll talk about that situation, about that detail in a little while. Let me tell you that Iran has also issued a warning because of what's happening with the oil situation. And look, this weekend has clearly been a weekend where the strategy is to attack these places. For example, this area, this island that has large amounts of oil. Here is 96% of Iranian oil and it has been under attack, along with other regions of that country. The Iranian army issued a direct warning today, which obviously raises the conflict to another level. Because what the spokesperson for the Iranian Central Military Command says, his name is Ibrahim, that from the area they are going to attack oil fields throughout the region. This if the attacks against Iranian energy infrastructure continue. The statement is issued by the state television of that country, which indicates that the message is also intended to have an international impact, but also a domestic one. The message includes a very clear economic warning. Oil could exceed $200 per barrel if the confrontation continues. This price level would imply a global energy shock comparable to or even greater than others that have occurred in the past. International markets are obviously following this whole situation very closely. If they go on to attack regional oil facilities, countries like Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Kuwait could be directly affected, while other oil-producing countries could benefit greatly. It could be Russia, or in any case, the United States, Venezuela, Mexico, or Norway. And here we see that, well, even in wars there's humor, and actually I think it's during wars when humor is practiced the most. Well, I think it's to try to relax a little bit. Here you can see a jet. Obviously, it's all animated, where a person is riding on a carpet. I imagine it must be an Iranian or something like that, flying on a carpet. Like an Aladdin, basically. And well, this Aladdin used to fly on carpets. Chihuahuas, well, this one. I think we have to learn to laugh even at the most complicated situations, because if we don't, what do we do? Now let's go over some details about what's happening in this world, right? The world. We're going to try to combine information from other things, because if not, we'll just be dreaming this topic, Iran and all of this. But let's finish with this topic and then we'll move on to other important matters. Hey, thanks to the community that's here live for liking and sharing. If you haven't done it yet, help us out, right? A like wouldn't hurt, or a dislike. If you don't like it, well, I want a dislike, then go ahead and hit dislike. But it's really appreciated. Thank you so much for your participation and for being here for a while. Remember that at night we have a chat, we read comments, and the conversation gets really, really good, right? So, well, thank you to those who send us a super chat or a PayPal. Well, it's really appreciated, obviously, all your support. And look, let's go over some of the details that are getting attention. Iran is imposing gasoline rationing of a maximum of 20 liters per person. This comes after a series of nighttime attacks on oil facilities in Tehran and nearby areas. The measures were announced by the authorities of the Iranian capital as a provisional action to prevent the collapse of the energy supply. The attacks attributed to Israel have impacted 4 oil storage facilities and a fuel transfer center. In the provinces of Alborz, and also in Tehran itself. The attack has been mainly attributed to Israel, which struck 4 oil storage facilities and a fuel transfer center. The explosions caused massive fires in the depots. That's something we were watching here very early in the morning, around 5 a.m. We were there live, witnessing the whole situation. On the other hand, the United States is considering sending special forces to Iran. In statements to reporters aboard Air Force One, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, does not rule out the idea of sending ground troops to Iran, which indicates a measure that will only be considered if the circumstances are exceptional. Maybe at some point we'll do it. It will be something great, says Trump. Having special forces inside Iran would be a huge issue and a potential escalation, obviously with greater risks. Also, well, for the United States itself and those who don't make sense but also conflict for what's happening inside Iran. Now, there's a question that a lot of people around the world are starting to ask because of the logic of the conflict. And Annie Jacobsen, Pulitzer Prize winner, an investigative journalist, claims that a nuclear conflict could start in a context very similar to what we're experiencing right now between the United States and Iran. She claims that, well, if this actually happens, it doesn't matter who wins, she says, because most people would end up dead. She says this is already an existential issue the moment conflicts at this level are allowed to happen. The information has been picked up by several international media outlets. Even here in Mexico, I saw it somewhere. I think it was El Heraldo de Mexico, El Imparcial, and several others that have been commenting on this situation. This analysis by a journalist is not the first one. And there have been scientists, there have been journalists, there have been analysts who say this issue is serious. It's a topic that could at some point in the serious sense become very grave. Because obviously all conflicts have a certain degree, obviously of seriousness, of gravity. But at the same time, there are some conflicts that you see from afar and you say, well, look, it's nothing more. Here we've talked to people who are in Thailand and they say they're in a conflict with Cambodia and they say, well, it's at the border. But look, life is normal for all the people or for most people. But when it's a conflict that extends so much that it can cause a bigger problem, obviously we're talking about a different issue there. In the meantime, do you remember this character? We showed him to you several times here. He's a rapper over in Nepal who, when this Gen Z movement to remove the government started, and they said we need to call for elections. And well, there was a candidate who was a rapper or ex-rapper, ex-singer, and he had won with the RSP party led by Valanda. Valencia has won the general elections in Nepal by securing a sufficient majority to form a government, driven by the Generation Z movement, which displaced the old political guard. According to official data from the Electoral Commission, as of Sunday morning, the emerging party has already secured 106 of the 165 directly elected seats and is leading the count in another 19 seats in another 19 places. Rather, what is striking is that they managed this political instability so that it did not turn into chaos. And in the end, it was the elections that decided well for Nepal in that sense, and let's hope that things go well in the future. We will be analyzing it. Meanwhile, let me also tell you that experts are pointing to a possible large-scale migration crisis in the Middle East. That possibility is already being analyzed. The evolution of the conflict could make the migration issue toward the European Union, above all, a problem. For example, Iran has a population of 92 million inhabitants, approximately 4 times more than Syria. Imagine if a war like the one in Syria in 2011, the Syrian civil war, were to happen. Imagine a large number of Iranians, millions of them, trying to leave the country, right? This is a reality that could happen. It's not happening right now, but it could happen. Iran has a fairly large population. In that context, what is pointed out? Warren T. Kite told EF News Agency that migration could get out of control, and in the region if the region becomes destabilized. The migratory impact would be mainly on the European Union, which could even surpass what it experienced in Syria. In that famous refugee crisis, to this day, there are still a large number of Syrians living in Europe because of that situation. So, it's a matter to be careful about. It's something that needs to be analyzed because of the consequences it could have for Europe, okay? Be careful with that issue. So, we'll also be paying attention to that situation. And well, where there is already migration, look at where there is migration, but it's still internal. If we look at the details of this place, let's go to Syria, look at what's happening inside. Lebanon, it's right there. Here in Lebanon, there's an internal migration, an internal exodus going on. Lebanon has already recorded 454,000 people displaced by the war. Just imagine, that's practically 500,000 people because of the conflicts that have happened with Israel. The bombings between Israel and Lebanon have caused almost 500,000 people to have to leave the area. Israelis are also displaced. In fact, in this part of northern Israel, there are still people who don't feel safe and who are displaced in the area. So, it's an issue that really affects the countries. It's not just migration that will affect European countries, but it's also the fact that this already creates very serious problems internally, where there are entire generations who lived in just one area, and then suddenly you say, well, there's no way to live there anymore, so let's go somewhere else, look for new opportunities, start from scratch. It's obviously a huge issue, and we shouldn't forget that it's also part of this conflict, right? The effects on people, the effects on the population, migration, and so on also need to be considered. And look, that's why it's believed that this is an improvised war. Because the side effects, the effect that's being generated, it seems like there's no analysis, there's not even anything preventive to avoid this kind of situation. Let's move on to other matters. In a few moments, we'll be back with another update and we'll be here.